theme book. Well, that would be Stand to Reason. Blacks in the Bible, right there. It's all good. It's all beautiful. We're going to get into chapter 13, which is family ties. Pretty much all these next, excuse me, all these next um, marks are going to be based on family. And, I felt this is important because without a family, you can't have a community. Without a community, you can't have a nation. And so kind of just start from the beginning, start from the bottom. Now we're here. Deuteronomy. We're gonna go to number 6, which is where my men's at. Pretty much Deuteronomy. Man, I killed that. 28:54 reads, "The most tender-hearted man among you will have no compassion for his own brother, his beloved wife, or his surviving children." Where to begin? Where to begin talking about black men? I thought that I would have a lot more to say when I came to this point, but there's books, there's blogs, there's all kinds of stuff dealing with just this one thing right here, and I don't want to sit over here and just start rattling off statistics and just start saying all this stuff. I mean, for what it's worth, So I'm not gonna be I don't want to dig too deep into that, but the point on the whole is that black men are not stepping up and doing the job they were intended to do. If the men are not performing in the community, then in reality it ceases to be a community. If the word community has the word commune in it, which in then one is to expect that people will communicate and conduct themselves in a civil manner that uplifts the people. But if the head, where most of the communing or communicating comes from, is barely present, then the rest of the communal body will fall too. So, take that as you will. We're going to go on to number 7, which is locked up. Isaiah 42:22 reads, "But this is a people robbed and spoiled. They are all of them snared in holes. They are hid up in prison houses. They are for a prey, and none delivereth, for a spoil, and none saith restore." Pretty much the main thing to take from this is hid in prison houses. Virtually any statistic will clearly state that black people are the highest among any group to be in prison, particularly and not exclusive to black males. So, I mean, the statistics. I mean, I'm not going to sit over here and rattle, but one thing I will say is this: a great documentary to go to get the real deal skinny on this stuff is What Black Men Think. And I could tell you right now that it seems so bleak and everything like that. Oh my God, they're all in jail and this and that. But statistically speaking, there are more black men looking to pick this up than are in handcuffs, right? I mean, there are more black men in college than there are in jail. Make no mistake about that. Even amongst young black people, there are more black men in college than in jail. There are more, matter of fact, statistically speaking, there are more black men that apply for college than do white men. So, there's a lot on this. Like I said, a great documentary to go to get the real deal on this would be, What Black Men Think. I don't have a link or whatever, but if you can get that, watch that, because it's not as bad as people would make you think it is, But when we go a little bit further, part of the verse, it says, "None says restore." And pretty much when we look at this thing, we have these jails and everything where they're supposed to rehabilitate. You do your crime, you do your time, you get out, and it's supposed to be it. But yet, when we look at this thing, and another great book to get into is The New Jim Crow. Great book that kind of goes into the whole prison system and everything like that, and how it pertains to black folks. But pretty much when you get out of jail, you can't vote, you can barely get a job. and you're pretty much cut off from other necessities needed to progress in this world. We talk about rehabilitate, but yet it really does little to nothing, but just keep perpetuating the same cycle. But yet at the same time, right? I mean, there's money in this thing, and I start talking about the prison industrial complex, but um, let's just move on. Oh man, my blood boiling. But of the same verse that we just read, Isaiah 42:22. In the NLT version, it says, "But his own people have been robbed and plundered, enslaved, imprisoned, and trapped. They are fair game for anyone and have no one to protect them, no one to take them back home." Um, and when we talk about take them back home and restore and everything like that, um, pretty much we are the only people, I dare say, who has been through as much as we've been through, I dare say in the world, but particularly in the United States, and have gotten nothing for it. Not a nil. Even then, I mean, I know that it's bad on reservations and all this other kind of good stuff, but at least you got those reservations. I mean, it's even a constitutional thing. Like, it's in the laws that we're supposed to get restitution, but yet it hasn't happened. I think it took them to like 1990 something. I think Bill Clinton or somebody was like the first to give an official apology. That's the most we got. Even then, when we look in World War II, the Japanese got restitution for being in internment camps. Like, it's just one of those things where, when we talk about, none say restore and all this other good stuff, and we talked about civil rights, man, we talked about, human rights and everything like that. Like, I want to just inform people that we didn't get anything. Like, it's almost like we were at negative, and getting our, freedoms and human rights got us to like a higher negative, and civil rights like got us to zero, being equal. Right? Like, we haven't you know what I'm saying? Like, oh, you got civil rights. Well, yeah, like it took us this long to struggle to get up to zero. Wow. But I can go deeper into that. Um, but the main thing I want to get across, and I know that there are black folks out there that, they talk about reparations and all this other kind of good stuff. And even though it's just due, even though it is, I tell you that it's not coming. So you got to be your own little Jesus Christ. You got to be your own savior. You gotta look towards yourself and your community, those around you. But I'm gonna have a whole nother. This is gonna be a whole nother thing about that. Even then, when we talk about financials and stuff like that, that's gonna be powerful. But I just want to jump on to the next one because I'll take too much time. Womankind is the eighth, and pretty much in Deuteronomy 28:56 states, "The most tender and delicate woman among you, so delicate she would not so much as touch the ground with her foot, will be selfish towards her husband she loves, and towards her own son and daughter. She will hide them. She will hide them the afterbirth of the new baby she has born, so that way she can secretly eat them." Obviously, look, you got to look at this thing metaphorically, but I think that a lot of what this is talking about is the quote unquote welfare queen, right? The way that the system is set up is that, the more children you have, the more assistance you're entitled to, right? And I know there are people that do need this, that do really need that hand up, not a handout or whatever. But as far as this system is concerned, I put as you can clearly see how it can perceive as women's children are being certainly ate up by the system. And oh god, there's so much about that. But and here's the thing, we're talking about women, how they treat their children or whatever, and it's one of those things where in many cases it's a miracle if the child even gets here. When they talk about the number one killer of African Americans is? I'm gonna let you guess. I'm just gonna take like maybe 10 seconds or whatever. I want you to think about this. What is the number one killer of African Americans? Okay, if you guessed drugs, okay. If you've guessed, violence, gun violence, you've guessed, even that I know it's one of the marks, but, sicknesses, diseases, whatever. Okay. The main killer of African Americans is abortions. We get killed before we even get here. And I know some people say, well, it's not life until it, I'm not here to get into that. But that's the main killer. That's the main reason. And, oh man. Yeah, I don't want to get too deep into that, but uh, we're gonna go on a little further down, start talking about the different aspect, right? Because now we've seen this aspect of women where it's not in we're just weak, right? And then we're gonna see the other aspects. So Isaiah 3:12 reads. As for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. O my people, they which lead thee cause thee to go err and destroy the way of thy paths. I mean, pretty much, it's no secret. You look at this thing and you see that for what it's worth, black women are just stepping up. And it's one of those things where that's just how black women are designed. If you're a black woman or whatever, you come from a land where you were considered equal. There was always a god and a goddess. There wasn't like a god and a spirit or a ghost or whatever. You were just the same as a man. There are women who, uh, there are many more African women who have led than I dare say any other woman in the modern world that we can think of. And something else to kind of go along with that, in ancient societies or whatever, and I'll tie it all back in, but in ancient society, you took for granted, like it's one of those things that you took for granted, in a good way. There was no black woman's rights, right? Like it's something you didn't have to struggle for. It was just inherent in the culture and the nature. It's almost like when I walk down this, like people just wearing shoes, like it's just so commonplace. Like you don't even think that, wearing shoes is even that big of a deal. You go to these other places and people don't even have shoes. You're like, wow, I didn't even know. It's like the same thing. Like in this culture, I mean, that's why we have the women's lib movement and all this other kind of good stuff because that's the way it is, but that's not the way that it was. And coming from that, I'll say inherently is that drive and desire to, when the man's not there, step up, boom. You know, that's why there's more black women that go to church. In here, I said go to college, but I don't think that statistic is correct. I still think that there are more. I still maybe do a little bit more research on it, but I still think that there are more black men in college than black women. But there are more black women staying out of jail, certainly volunteering in the community and being, single parents. So that's what that is. But we're gonna jump into the next one, which is the ninth, which is for the children. And when we go back to the last um, verse, when we look at Isaiah 3:12, I'm gonna reread it again. The Bible states, "As for my people, children are their oppressors." Um, it's no secret that a lot of people fear. In essence, we've grown to fear young black youth or whatever. We have a lot of gangs and violence and all this other kind of good stuff. I wish I could just. Oh man, I'm just gonna blog about that perception of that bullshit. But pretty much the perception. That's what I'll say. The perception is that we're just these dangerous thug like criminals and all this other kind of good stuff. But when we look at it, Deuteronomy 28:32, your sons and daughters will be given to another people, while you look, there's nothing you can do about it. And when we look at this thing, we could see that as easily as babies being taken away, as far as the adoption system or the foster care system, or getting taken away as far as being carted off to jail, um, things of that nature that I wish I had more time to just dig into, but I really don't. And when we go down a little bit further, Isaiah 51:20 states, "Thy sons have fainted; they lie at the head of all the streets as a wild bull in a net. They are full of fury; they are full of the fury of the Lord. They rebuke thy God." Now you can obviously see, look, you can see this is violence and death, but when we think about the heads of the streets, you can think of street corners, but more importantly, we can think of places where people hang out, you know, and it says, when the Bible notes them as acting like a wild bulls in a net, quite literally, right? They're acting buck wild. Even then, sometimes not necessarily being dangerous or whatever, but just being buck wild, just acting hell just like niggas, right? Just like what it is. I don't want to sit here and put my people down or whatever. That's not the aim, but um, and even then when we look at the next verse, because it was what Isaiah 51:20. If we look at it, the next verse, Isaiah 51. Isaiah 51:20, the next verse, "Therefore, hear now this, thou afflicted and drunken, but not with wine." So, now we could see with the recent, war on drugs, and, we see now, crack and heroin and all these other kind of drugs being pumped in the community, that's being drunken or being put into a state of mind, not necessarily with alcohol. So, um, we can kind of draw some of the conclusions there. And, this thing is hitting the black community, not just the women or the men, but obviously, it's the children. And we're going to go into number 10, which is ill, not sick. I'm going to go into, I think, Deuteronomy 28:60 through 61. "He will afflict you with the diseases of Egypt that you feared so much, and you will have no relief. The Lord will afflict you with every sickness and plague there is, even those not mentioned in this book of instruction, until you are destroyed." I mean, so pretty much here we see that God is saying, you're gonna get all these diseases, some of which you've never even heard about. And we look in today's time, we talk about cancer, we're looking at AIDS, we're looking at all these different things that they would just have. And a lot of this stuff is right in our community, they talk about, AIDS and all this other good stuff. And I wish I had time to talk about the manufacturing of AIDS, but I don't. So, if you want to do some independent research on that, or AIDS, or the polio vaccine, or whatever, wink, wink, please feel free. um, and when we talk about health, I guess another thing I want to go into, we talk about not just physical, but mental, spiritual health. I mean, there's just a lot. Everything just kind of ties in that, I just can't really talk about right now. I want to stay on topic, but the last section of this chapter is cast away, and pretty much by this time it should be crystal clear who the Israelites, the Jews, whatever. It should be crystal clear who these people are. And there, by this time, how do I say it? There are some people who contend that, well, okay, all right, well, I guess I'll and I've been through this. Well, I'll concede. All right, it is what it is. But you know what? At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because you've been cast aside. Or black people have been cast aside, and now this thing is just open. Da 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 da. That's the fallback defense. Well, as far as that is concerned, I'm just gonna read it from the book. There's an assumption out there that would assert something to the effect of the thought that none of this really matters, as Israelites have been cast aside, and there is now a new people to take up God's cause. Romans 11, 1 through 4 states that God has not by any means cast his people away. And one thing I want to point out is Paul, right? Because Paul, obviously himself, is a Jew, or no, he's from the tribe of Benjamin, excuse me. So so Paul is an Israelite. If he's been cast away, then you might as well cast out everything that he wrote away as well. You know what I'm saying? Like, why would you even accept that? And if you're one of those, if you're a Christian or whatever, and that's, then you got to pretty much throw out most of the New Testament where you get most of your doctrine from. So there's no way that the Israelites have been cast out. And when we look at Jeremiah 31:35 through 37, basically states that it is only when the stars no longer shine that Israel will cease to be his nation. So, obviously when the sun stops shining, and I think we have another good, I don't want to say million, at least another good million years of this. I mean, because it is aging. The sun is aging, so I think we have a good another million years or so. I think that's what the Science Channel said. But even then, once this sun goes, then we gotta wait till all of them go too, and then we gotta hope that in that time no new suns form. So that's gonna be a long time. So don't hold your breath. But with that, we're at the end of the chapter. I've been talking far too long. This is Standard Reason, Blacks in the Bible, Facebook, Twitter, hit me up, all that other fun stuff. We're going to go on to the next one, which is chapter 14, the list. Dum, dum, dum. And we'll be out. So with that, I'm out.